attached the original one that I handed into our staff?
Through the chair to Councilor Palm, you'll notice that the motion that is up on the screen now with the bolded words is the motion. The one that was in the agenda did not have the "and agreed to" added. So this is the actual motion.
Thank you very much. So I'm glad that is now cleared up. I read it out at the last meeting, so I'm glad to see it's on the screen now. So, Your Worship, I'm going to read the motion that's on the screen, and then I will say a few words about it. So, in regards to tourism, whereas Tourism Powell River, the Society, Incorporation number S00304113 at section 4.5 and 5.4 and 5.4B made covenant and agreed to use funds provided to it by the city pursuant to the Tourism Powell River Service Agreement to use funds provided to it exclusively for the purpose of promoting the city of Powell River as a tourist destination, not Cathat, and whereas the society used city funds to change its name from Tourism Powell River to Cathat Tourism Society, the society breached section 8.1C of the Tourism Powell River Service Agreement by expending city funds on time, energy, and activities that are beyond the scope of the services described in the agreement at 5.4 A through G. Therefore, be it resolved that should the Tourism Society be unwilling to change its name back from Cathat Tourism Society to Tourism Powell River, the city under section 8.1 shall terminate the agreement forthwith by providing written notice to the society pursuant to section 9 of the Tourism Powell River Service Agreement.
I will second the motion for discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. So first of all, I want to be very specific in terms of the comments that I'm going to make here tonight. Before I make comments in terms of this motion, or the second one that I'll be making later tonight, the reason that I brought these forward is simply for discussion purposes and for council to weigh in on the subjects being proposed here. I am not talking about the tourism office, personnel, board members, anything to that in that respect. I'm simply going to be talking about the funding of our tourism center. That is the purpose. And the reason I do that is that with our new procedure bylaw in place now, when a delegation comes forward to present motions such as along these same lines, there is very little opportunity for discussion or follow-up because of our new procedure bylaw. So it almost makes it relevant for a member of council, if they so wish, to follow up on those discussions so that we have clarity on the subject that we're dealing with. And that's why these two motions are before us tonight. Now, the first thing I will say in terms of my motion, if you'll just, if you could put the motion back on the screen and just scroll down to the last part of it, you will see that the ask before council tonight simply asks for a name change to bring back reference to Powell River. Now, that giving notice in that regard to the society Tourism Society gives them 90 days from tonight, if this were to pass, to change the name back. It's not a done deal here. The society will have a great deal of time to deliberate and plan their course of action. So it's a simple ask, and it's a reasonable request considering the facts that I believe Mr. Orchardson laid out earlier this evening. We all heard them. We have a contract, and that contract, when it was renewed, provided our tourism society with over $500,000 for the next 3 years to run their operation. That $500,000 is exclusively city funds from the taxpayers of Powell River. I don't think I can be any clearer than that. Now, if it wasn't for the city funds being contributed, which are 74%, I believe, of the government funding that the society receives, they would have a hard time operating and keeping the lights on and doing promotion for the city of Powell River. Now, I don't want to belabor the point that I'm trying to make here, that there was definitely a lack of notice. There was definitely a lack of consultation when this was brought into force. This was planned long ago while those negotiations were taking place to put a new contract in place. Let's not lose sight of that. So it's a simple ask tonight. I've said my piece. I've stayed to the point. And, Your Worship, I will allow you to ask for further comments before we vote on the motion.
Yes, Councilor Armida.
Thank you, Mayor. I can't vote in favor of this motion for multiple reasons. Councilor Palm's motion refers to the name of the society. Nowhere in the promotion of the visitor center does it say visitor center run by Cassette Tourism Society. In fact, LIFT, Inclusion, MICLAT, or any one of the societies in this community could apply when the application comes up to operate the visitor center if they so chose to. And they would get the same contract to operate the visitor center. The sign on the front of the visitor center says Visitor Information Center. There's a logo for Powell River on the front. The website still says Tourism Powell River or Discover Powell River, whichever website it is. It has nothing to do with the name of the society. And second to that fact, the society has $7,000 in member revenue that comes from membership that has nothing to do with city funds. It has another $6,600 that comes from renting a room in their office that they have to rent from a private landlord. So that's over almost $14,000 in excess revenue in addition to what they receive from the city and the QRD. And the total cost for the name change, because there were no legal fees involved, was just the society cost, which amount to $80.
Councilor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. I just have one difficulty with this resolution, and that is that it targets an issue that I think is superficial to a much more primary issue, in my view. And that more primary issue is the question of the name of our city. Before that issue comes before us, which I understand is going to be an opportunity we'll have when our CAO brings consideration of priorities for this council over the next few months, a year. then we'll have the opportunity to discuss what we want to do with, in particular, our strategic priorities, which speak directly to that more primary question. Until we do that, I can't support this, and I can't support any other issue that is secondary to that more primary issue. So that is what I want to see happen here. I want to see engagement, conversation that leads us to ending the divisiveness in this community. And that's my position on this at this time. Thank you.
Councilor Doubt.
So I've looked at the motion. I've actually read the contract between the Cathet Tourism Society and the City of Powell River to provide services. It does not say that the society will provide tourism services to the City of Powell River and not Cathet Regional District. Matter of fact, Cathet Regional District provides a percentage, almost a quarter, of the funding for the tourism center to provide visitor information for the entire regional district. And for those who aren't aware, all of us who are ratepayers and taxpayers in the City of Powell River are also ratepayers and taxpayers in the Cathet Regional District. We are the Cathet Regional District. You know, I would suggest that you go and check your tax notice, and you'll find on the tax notice a line for Cathet Regional District property taxes. So that's there. That's a fact. Okay? The motion doesn't ask Cathet Tourism to consider changing the name. It just somehow assumes that will be done. I don't think it should be done. Okay? I think they've got the right and they have the ability to change the name of their society to whatever they want it to, as long as they provide the services that they say they'll provide. Okay? Councilor Southcott and myself and a member of the regional district board were...
Point of order, Chair. Sorry, not against the speaker, but against the chamber. We should not be hearing boos from the chamber during discussion.
So today, Councilor Southcott and myself and Jason Lennox, the director of the regional district, were at a coastal tourism destination marketing effort, which was working to market the entire coastal and island tourism business, looking for input on what was available for tourism activities in Powell River, Lund, everywhere else on the coast, the southern Sunshine Coast. A great event. And this is what they do. It's what they do for the contributions we make to the society. It's not to have an argument about what the name of the society would be. We pay them to promote tourism, and that's what they do. I'm not in favor of this motion. I don't think we need to ask them to change their name, and I think we should be spending our time and effort on more important things.
Councilor Early.
Thank you, Your Worship. I first want to speak to some inaccuracies within the motion. In the first whereas clause where it says not Cathet, that's actually not part of the agreement. That was added in, is not accurate. It is in fact impossible to promote the City of Powell River without promoting Cathet, because just like BC is part of Canada, the City of Powell River is part of Cathet. We are part of the Cathet Regional District. And so there is no such thing as promoting the City of Powell River without also promoting Cathet as a tourism region, because we are one and the same and the both. Cathet is larger than the City of Powell River, but the City of Powell River is fully contained and part of Cathet region. And so I know that some people don't like to think of it that way, but that is exactly how it works. So our waste transfer station that is sitting in the City of Powell River and run by the Cathet Regional District handles waste for the entire region. So there is no such thing as promoting the City of Powell River and not Cathet. That's not a thing. It's not even legally possible. And then the second inaccuracy that I wanted to bring attention to is that whereas the society used city funds to change its name, there's no evidence at all been presented that that is the case. We've had legal advice and we've asked staff if there's any evidence that that is the case, and they've all said, nope, you don't have any feet to stand on there. So as a city, we must adhere to our contracts. We have a funding contract which has not been breached. There is no breach to this contract. We've asked. It's not the case. So as much as you'd like to think it is, this is just not the case. So we have a contract and we should fulfill that contract. This motion proposes that we assume guilt on an item that we have no evidence of and ask for reparations that we don't have any right to. And so council doesn't even manage contracts. The city staff do that. It's not even within our bailiwick to do that. We set policy and staff makes sure that we're following our rules and being legal. So our advice is the contract is not in breach and we must follow through with that contract. And so the whole motion is out of order. It's not within our purview to mess with contract administration. So those are my comments.
Thank you. So here's my position. We've heard a lot of googly gawk about lawyers, etc. To me, this is very simple. The Cathet Tourism Bureau should have had the courtesy to come to council prior to them asking for funding and saying, we intend to change the name. That would have provided a simple approach which would have showed some reasonable consideration for all of the people in Powell River that were going to fund this. So while I agree there is no legal recourse here, I think the message should be very simple, that in the future, if you're going to do something like this, which is going to excite a lot of taxpayers in Powell River for not being respected, that hopefully this will not happen again. So you have a second comment, Councilor Isaacson?
I haven't commented for my first time. So I think I won't repeat what's already been said, but I would like to state that I think it's irresponsible for material in our agendas to make claims that are not factual, even though they are stated as fact, because it gives the impression, even though it is a motion from a member, it gives the impression because it's promoted in our agendas.
Point of order. Could you explain which one was not factual so that we can appreciate that what you're saying?
Councillor Elliott pointed to two. And so so when things are published in our agenda, I think the public feels that it's the truth that's published in our agendas. And sometimes items in our agendas are reported in the media and people take that as a truth when there's more information or incomplete information or inaccurate information that's not included. So I think it's irresponsible for our agendas to be used in these ways. I would prefer not to see motions from any councillor made about any society in this town that states things in a negative light that are not factually accurate. I don't think it reflects us well to be disparaging the ability of organizations to uphold their agreements to the city in public if they're not based in fact. So that's one of my concerns. While public engagement or engagement with council could have been a choice of the society, I wasn't looking for it in the sense that we are absolutely a major funder, but we are a major funder of a number of societies in this community that operate independently with independent boards. And I'm not interested in delving into the operations of those societies. And this is a topic that the topic at hand is not about public engagement. The topic is whether or not we feel that they breached their contract and whether we want them to do something about it. And I don't support this motion. Thank you.
Any further comment on the Councilor Palm?
Your Worship, I would just follow up with a couple of additional comments after the comments I've heard just now. And first of all, Councilor Almeida alluded to the fact that there was a cost of $80 to the society to change the name. I first of all want to state, this is not about the name change of Powell River. This is the society changing their name. It has nothing to do with the name change of the city of Powell River. However, the $80 that was expense, Councilor Almeida, the government funding that goes into their coffers is 3/4 represented by the taxpayers of this community. So don't try to tell me, they all go into general fund. Don't try to tell me that they just reached over here into this one and pulled those funds out. That's not the case. When you look at the overall funding of the office to run Powell River Society, the taxpayers are paying the bills to the tune of $500,000 for the next 3 years, where there was no consultation prior to us raising our hand and providing that new contract. So, number one. Number two, Councillor Elliott referred to legal. Well, there was a legal opinion that was brought forward, but it was from another citizen's questions regarding, I'm not sure what, but it's not talking about what I'm talking about here tonight. That's our contract, A through G, and what it stipulates. That was for one sole factor, to promote the city of Powell River. So let's get away from the legal nonsense. And the last part, the contract is the contract. Don't lose sight of the contract. Thank you, Your Worship.
Okay. Councilor Almeida.
Councilor Palm, the legal opinion was received because I asked staff a question back in June when the name change became finalized, whether there was a breach in contract. And then staff took it upon themselves to get the legal opinion, and the legal opinion determined that there wasn't any breach of contract that was already done. So it's not because somebody from the community did it. Staff got the legal opinion because I asked a question, and that's what it was. You can make up all the other stuff you want, all the other things about vision and this and that, and then whether you take 10 cents from here and 10 cents from there, there's plenty of revenue that is not city money that is in their budget, and they used $80.
Okay.
Worship, just one.
Point of order, Chair. Point of order, Chair.
Whoa.
Point of order, Chair. There's a
You
procedure.
shut up when you.
Point of order, Chair.
Easy.
Respect.
You
Point of order.
quit talking. All right. Okay.
I challenge the chair.
You cannot talk. Okay?
I propose a recess, Chair.
No,
You've lost control of the meeting and aren't following the rules of procedure.
no. When you have a point of order called, if those of you on council can read, you can see in front of you what the procedure is. The person who calls for a point of order is silent, and that allows the chair to make a ruling. If there is a consensus against the ruling of the chair, then it can be revisited. So I think we should take 2 minutes and read in front of us calling a point of order. Then we'll be able to have this discussion.
Point of order.
We're taking a 2-minute recess so that all council can read calling a point of order.
You should probably read it yourself. Your job was to recognize the point of order and ask what it was. Process. Number 3.
Okay, let's get back to business. I'm going to ask our CAO if the corporate officer would like to provide some direction at this point.
Yes, Mr. Fleming is on the call, and Mr. Fleming, if you could provide council with some direction on the point of order process, please.
Okay, I will read from the bylaw. So under points of order, in addition to the presiding member's duty to preserve order and decide points of order that may arise, the presiding member will call a point of order if a motion or conduct is contrary to the rules, whether or not another member has raised a point in connection with the motion or conduct. If a council member raises a point of order in connection with the motion or conduct of a speaker, the member that called the point of order will cite the appropriate rule or authority that has been contravened and will define the corrective action to resolve the contravention. That's step one. Step two, the speaker must cease speaking when called to order and while the point of order is being stated. Three, the presiding member will decide on the point of order. So those are the three steps that take when a point of order is raised. Then it gets into if the presiding member is of the opinion that the conduct is contrary to the rules, the presiding member will cite the rule or authority without argument or comment and direct the corrective action as previously stated. The ruling of the presiding member may be appealed. And then on appeal, there's a vote that the mayor doesn't get to vote in. So then it goes on to discuss that process, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. So we have a motion on the floor.
And I raised a point of order. And so now to explain the point of order in council meetings, we're meant to only speak once to a motion. And because we're starting to speak twice, we're getting into debate and some, I think, comments towards each other that are unkind and not decorum. And so I think it's possible to call the question without calling on further speakers. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Elliott and then Councillor Palm.
I also raised a
Sure.
point of order.
Before you've pointed out to us that there is a process for determining points of order. The first one is for a member to call a point of order. Second one is for the chair to ask the member with the point of order to explain what their point is and what is behind that in our rules. The next thing is not to go around the table and have a discussion about further points of order. The next thing in the list is for the chair to make a ruling, whether there is a valid point of order or not. And then the body can figure out whether they accept that. That's what's written in the rules of order, is what's written in our
Councillor
policy book.
Elliott.
I think
have-
we're at the spot where you're
Mr.
supposed
Mayor,
to rule on
I
that.
have a point of order.
So do I. And I was recognized.
Okay, so
Well,
So I do have a
I'm just
point of
trying to
order, but
get-
it can wait until you're finished with the first one.
very good. Thank you.
Yes.
That resolves that issue.
So we're looking for your ruling, Mayor, on whether the point of order of that we should be only speaking once and the remedy being moving to calling the question, whether you agree with that and whether you'd like to take that course.
from my experience, very seldom have we ever not allowed second or third questions on motions. I think in consisting with what we have done in the past, I will allow subsequent questioning on this. Now, Councillor Elliott and then Councillor Doubt.
So I also raised a point of order. And my point of order is that we have a conduct, expectation of conduct on our council, and yelling shut up at people isn't part of it. And so I think you owe Councillor Isaacson an apology for that, because she was not out of order and she wasn't doing anything wrong. She was simply trying to explain her point of order, which is part of the process.
Okay.
And then you further said all of us can't read. And that is also not respectful. So that is my point of order, Your Worship.
All right. So I apologize for the insensitivity of my comment, which I thought was due course Because normally as Councillor Doubt pointed out, after somebody says call of order, they are quiet. And then the chair requests them to comment further on why they think there was a point of order. In this case, the councillor did not allow me that opportunity. She kept talking. But I agree, perhaps was insensitive. So let's move on to the second point that you have, if you have one.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I think we should go on to calling the question or finishing your debate on the motion that's on the floor, which I don't think there's any useful debate yet. I think all points are repetitious.
Okay, so Councillor Doubt, did you have a further comment?
My comment would be the same as Councillor Elliott, is that I think we have gone to the point where everybody has explained their position on the debate. We're deteriorating into personal attacks, and I think we'd be better off just to vote on the question.
Great, we have a motion. Councillor Palm.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Last word. I'm sorry that this motion has caused this dialogue to happen. Very unfortunate. My ask is very simple. Give the society 90 days to respond to our request. That's what the motion reads. And I would be very happy if the society would write back to us if we were to pass this motion and simply say, point well taken. Let's call the Tourism Society, Cathat Society, Powell River / Cathat Society, so that we encompass the entire region, which I have always advocated for from the days when I was on the regional district board. The betterment of all that live in our entire region is what I'm advocating for, Your Worship. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor. Does anybody care for it to be reread before we vote? Apparently not. All in favor? Opposed? Motion is defeated. All right. Let's, okay, let's.
Can you call the gallery to order, Mayor, please? There's some swearing and rudeness from it.
Yes, if we could ask that the council chamber is respectful. And we'll now go on to the next agenda item, but there was so much energy there that it's caused my computer to go to sleep. So, Councillor Palm, I believe you had the next item.
Thank you, Worship. You heard my initial comments as to why I've asked for this motion to be on tonight's agenda. It's the same rationale. So this motion is entitled Barnett Street Temporary Shelter Recommendations, and these came from the public. So I will simply read it and then have a few comments. Whereas on August 19th, 2025, the Westview Ratepayer Society Supportive Housing Committee delegation made requests on behalf of the safety and well-being of residents, businesses, and BC Housing / Vancouver Coastal Health clients. Therefore, be it resolved that Council recommend the following request to BC Housing made by Westview Ratepayer Society Supportive Housing Subcommittee at the August 19, 2025 Committee of the Whole meeting with regard to the new 24/7 shelter and OPS project on Barnett Street. 1. Lease terms between the City and Provincial Rental Housing Corporation / BC Housing Management Commission must protect and safeguard the community. 2. 24/7 security at the project site provided by an independent third party. 3. Overdose prevention site not co-locate at the project site. And 4. Shelter remains inclusive and operates as a dry facility. So, Your Worship, I'm going to go through the points that the public is asking for.
Councillor Palm, The motion has to be seconded
Oh,
for
sorry.
discussion. So I'm seconding the motion for discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. Much appreciated. So let's just take a look at the asks of the delegation that came forward previously. And number one, lease terms between the city and Provincial Rental Housing Corporation, BC Housing Management Commission must protect and safeguard the community. So it's very important that the city and the public are aware of what is in the contract between the housing provider and those operating it, so that the public has some kind of idea whether the stipulations of the contract are being met. And we have asked in the past for a copy of the agreement, which hasn't been provided to the city. So I'm hoping that we will get a copy of that so that we can monitor the situation and for the safety of all, not just our citizens, but those that are vulnerable. Everyone needs to be safe. Number two, 24/7 security at the project site provided by an independent third party. We have also asked for that in the existing facility. They have not met the requirement for whatever reason. And we know what's happening in our community as far as safety of not only the more vulnerable, but the people living around the site. And to that note, I have been approached by various citizens that work in the vicinity of our existing building on Joyce. And with winter approaching, the comments that I'm getting for many of the people that work around there is, I don't know what I'm going to do now because I am frightened to go to my car to go home after work. That's what I'm hearing. It's out there. And I hate to hear safety being jeopardized for those good working citizens that are abiding by the law. So, you know, that's a byproduct of what we're putting in place. Number three, overdose prevention site not co-locate at the project site. Now, I was very fortunate this past week to be at a conference in Victoria at UBCM. I didn't go to UBCM because I don't have to spend a bunch of taxpayers' money. I've been there numerous times. I know what goes on, but I did go to a couple of very important meetings, one on BC ferries, one on resource management, forestry, and the state of our province. And I was very fortunate to be sitting at my table with an empty seat beside me, and the mayor of Nanaimo happened to come over and sit down. I was allowed to say, Mayor Cron, I really appreciate what you're doing for my hometown of Nanaimo when you asked for a drug-free, alcohol-free facility to be put in place on Terminal Avenue, which is one of the heart of our business district in Nanaimo. I know it very well. And I asked him, what response from the government did you get? And the government, he tells me, simply said, no. So the article, the news article that was written afterwards states the fact that BC Housing said, no, we need to provide these drugs to help the most vulnerable. But after that, after his ask, the person from BC Housing, the minister, stated in the press that Nanaimo will now be on track to get not a 50, which is Terminal Avenue, which is just supportive, a roof over their head. They will provide a 78-bed facility, which will be very much minimal in terms of drugs and alcohol on that premise. And by asking for this to be passed here tonight, we are simply sending the message to BC Housing that we want the same thing for the new one being proposed by the hospital. That's what we're asking for here. We send a message, and that's simply sending a message. that there's got to be a better way to deal, because the present model of a roof over your head and providing free drugs is not working for our community as a whole. I'm sorry to say, but that's just the way I feel. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but that's just me. After I talked to Leonard Kronk, the mayor of Nanaimo, in no uncertain terms that day, I found out that my poor hometown is on the verge of a situation beyond control. So, as I bring up my screen for the last item, which is number 4, shelter remains inclusive and operate as a dry facility. That's the message I want to send, so that we get some traction in this town to try to prevent and have a safe environment for all. That's simple. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Armida, did you have a comment? No, Councilor Isaacson.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple of different views. One, to be clear, drugs are not provided at OPS sites. They are not provided at OPS sites. It is a safe place to consume drugs, but drugs are not provided at OPS sites. So I want to make that clear. One thing that I do, one item that I respect in this list here is the reference to a dry shelter, in the sense that I do think there is a need for more than one shelter serving more than one purpose in this community. And unfortunately, we're not of a size like Nanaimo where we have the opportunity to advocate and situate more than one shelter at this time. I think ideally we wouldn't have to have any shelters because everyone would be housed. But I think it does make sense to have more than one solution to meet more than one need. If you look at the homelessness count stats that were released today by Lyft from earlier this year, I think almost 25% of those who were reached in the homelessness count are under the age of 25. The number one reason for being homeless is not having enough revenue to pay market rent. And number 2, conflict with parent or guardian. So there are absolutely vulnerable people, vulnerable youth, vulnerable seniors in a variety of states of being and health. And I think it would make sense to have more than one option, but that's not the option that we have on the table. And I do believe that for many in this community, having health services co-located with housing is really important to ensure that people live long enough to be able to have choices and make choices related to their future health, whether that's going into recovery or being able to, or detox, or finding other paths forward. And I also want to share a counterpoint as it relates to safety and security. I will live a block from the shelter. I do now feel comfortable walking alone at night to and from the hospital, which I've done, to emergency, walking past supportive housing, walking in the dark, past the forested area near my home where I know some people shelter. I don't feel unsafe. I can understand that people might feel unsafe in the sense that there's changes in this community and they're not used to it, and things feel different and uncomfortable. And I understand how that can lead to feelings of insecurity and lack of safety, and of some people have been impacted negatively by things that may or may not be related to the shelter in this housing. But to add an alternative or an additional perspective, I feel safe, and I believe I will continue to do so, living a block from the shelter. Thank you very much.
Councilor Southcott.
Thank you, Worship. I appreciate this motion and some of it. Because as like Councilor Isaacson, our community absolutely needs places both for people who can't. Socialization is very central to all of us. And there are many people, as I think she already mentioned, who can't endure being in close proximity with people who are using or drinking or whatever. I saw like slews of evidence of this through my paramedic career. So the aspiration to have a place for people, all the people who do not want to be in proximity to substances, I wish we actually had that. And we actually do have more of that now than we did when I came back here to this community. That was 20 years ago. MICLAD is what I'm talking about. And we've supported that. We might remember that about a year and a half ago, a little bit more than a year and a half ago, we pushed for security again. And what happened? Basically, all we did was we delayed the provision of emergency cold weather shelter for 10 days, during which time, fortunately, there wasn't enough cold weather to actually have that open. But we actually don't have the power here. It's the province that makes the decisions. We can advocate, we can ask, God knows, we have asked many times in the past, including the example I just gave. We don't have the power. What we need, we all clearly understand. I'm pretty confident of that. The only third thing that I want to mention is Mr. Rick Craig's comments, and that is the potential for community involvement here. Now, one thing that hasn't happened here yet is block watch. I think that there could be a whole lot more provided right within this community. Those of us who did attend UBCM, there was an excellent presentation on the Monday afternoon called, it had to do with the street disorder. That was the title of and there were excellent experts who provided a lot of insight. The problems we are having here are all over the place, and they're worse in the larger centers, Victoria being even worse than Nanaimo and Vancouver. We don't even want to think about what goes on there right now. The problems are universal. We really need to work on this together. I appreciate Mr. Craig's suggestion, and that is what I really want to see happen, is more discussion that brings us together to look for solutions that we can provide here, because the province is going to do what they are going to do, and I honestly can't conscience getting in the way of what they will provide, and that's what actually has been proposed. It pains me to understand that, but that's the position I am in, so I can't wholeheartedly support most of this resolution. Thank you.
Councilor Dowd.
First off, I won't support this motion. I won't support it for the following reasons.
Okay, just I would ask that if you not provide verbal response, and it's a courtesy, and I think everybody here likes to have courtesy. So please, in the future, no comments. Councilor Dowd.
I'm going to continue saying what I intended to say in the beginning, although I'm interrupted. I was going to say I'm not going to support this motion. On July 3rd, there was a closed meeting of council. All of council, as far as I recall, was there. At the end of that meeting, we rose and reported publicly that we were considering the disposition of city land by a lease agreement with BC Housing for the operation of a shelter. Without revealing anything that went on at the closed meeting beyond what's said here, it's obvious that if a lease agreement is going to be negotiated, then the people negotiating the lease have talked about what their demands are. I think at this stage, passing a motion to add additional demands doesn't make any sense. It's bad governance. It's a bad way to do business. And there we are. Council has agreed to negotiate a lease agreement. You can assume, just because naturally if one is being negotiated, although it has to be negotiated in private, that there will be targets set in place by each side about what they want to achieve. Okay. Hopefully we will come to a lease agreement. And I hope we come to a lease agreement because we need a place to shelter temporarily while we get supportive housing, which BC Housing has said they would like to provide. And while we work towards affordable and attainable housing for other people who are clean and dry and can transition into normal housing, but those are all steps along the way. And if we put roadblocks in the way that prevent us from doing the shelter stage, we will not get to the other stages. And I think we owe it to people in our community to provide the steps to get people off of the street, to avoid deaths that take place in our community because of drugs being used in dangerous places where they aren't supervised and where there isn't revival facilities there, and where there's frankly more risk. And the death rate from opioids has gone down in Powell River since the beginning of the opioid crisis. Safe injection and safe using sites that don't provide drugs have reduced deaths. They've saved lives in our community, and I think that's a benefit. That's why I won't be supporting this motion, and I'm proud of it. You can hold your signs up if you want, but that's where I stand.
Great. Okay. Councillor Elliott and then the mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So many of the points almost, and I'm not sure where I'd draw the line about what's in camera and out, but I'm comfortable that all of these issues were discussed in conversation when we were coming up with how this lease should go. We came up with a lot of provisions to protect the community that are part of our lease agreement over and above what the standard lease and agreement was for the province. And I look forward to seeing the final version very soon. The staff has been doing an excellent job of making sure that the provisions that council agreed to at the time we asked for them to negotiate that lease are being honored. And many of the provisions that we do have will help a lot. There's also commitment to, as it's temporary, at the other end of this temporary, that BC Housing will fund a different type of housing. And so I look forward to that as well. I just wanted to comment on a couple of points. I also sit on our community action team and the province-wide community action team through the Local Leaders United. We meet and we have come to our meetings on a regular basis, our public health officer that keeps us well informed of our statistics with relation to things. I am so much in favor of different types of places that can take care of all of our vulnerable people, including dry sites. So far, all of the advocating we've done in that regard has not come to fruition because that is just not what the province is funding right now, and we at the city can't afford to fund it ourselves. Transition housing for folks who are going through treatments and requiring transition housing is also something we don't have in our community and need. And we also need more treatment beds and better access to those treatment beds. We're talking about policy at the provincial level that might include more involuntary treatment for people that might help with repeat offenders for street crime. And the main holdback for that is the lack of treatment facilities that would be appropriate for involuntary. And most of us know that there isn't even enough treatment beds for the voluntary folks, which would have a higher success rate, let alone needing the involuntary beds. And so how do we split our resources? And that debate is happening at the provincial level right now. I kind of think we need a bit mix of both, but I wouldn't want to see a single voluntary treatment patient have to wait while we're filling up involuntary beds. It doesn't make sense. So the overdose prevention site, if it is located in a different place, increases risk to not just all community members, but those people who require it, and to the shelter itself. The overdose prevention site will not be inside the shelter. It will be on the same lot and it keeps that kind of activity out of the shelter, makes the shelter itself safer. The transportation that people do between the overdose prevention site and the shelter will be at minimal and be less impactful to the community. The entire site will be fenced so that there's not the opportunity for people to hurt one another, whether they be from outside the shelter area or inside. Currently, folks that are in danger of perhaps burning down their shelters because they're living rough in the woods, it's very difficult for us to relocate them to a safer place because we don't have a shelter at all. And so whether you're a vulnerable person who is using or somebody who is sober, we, the city, don't have any way to ask people to move into a shelter because there isn't one. We are in dire need of shelters to protect people from the cold. Some of those people are users and some aren't. Here in our city, the use of overdose prevention sites and drug checking have made people in our community safer than other communities that do not have that. We are the only community of our size that has that facility right now. And we're doing such a great job with it. Do we have all of the areas covered? We do not. Are we asking? You bet we are. We ask all the time. Should we take the money from taxpayers and fund it ourselves? I don't think so. We can't afford it. We need to speak up with all the other communities and ask the provincial government to fund more than just shelters for the most vulnerable. We need that. We also need some other things too. So I would hope that you would all join me in continuing to advocate for our community and the need for more services. Just because we're a small community doesn't mean we don't need the range of services that other communities have. So I'm not in favor of this motion because it's a little bit like throwing the baby out with the bathwater. We're not going to protect those people because we can't protect that other person too. That's not how we get this job done. We need to protect all the people and they all need places to go. And we're not going to get there if we start saying no to everything. Thanks.
Okay. It's please.
I know.
Respect from the audience. Okay, so I'm going to talk on this issue because I appear to be the only one that's interested in the majority of the residents of Powell River. And I say this.
Point of order,
because,
Chair.
What is your point of order?
By saying that you are the only one who speaks on, is concerned about the majority of residents, one might misinterpret what majority of residents think, and also I think is intended to speak down about the rest of council and our interests of connecting with the public. Thank you.
Thank you. I will rephrase that and say, I am the only one sitting here today who has actively been involved in forming 3 centers in different cities to help people who were addicted to drugs recover. So from that perspective, I have seen the value of having order in putting together drug recovery programs. That respects the neighborhood. In each of these 3 programs that I was involved with, we never had an issue with the community. The simple answer is why? Because we followed the teachings of one of the leading psychiatrists in North America that said there are rights and there are responsibilities, so that anybody coming into our program had to apprentice so they understood what their rights and what their responsibilities were when they're in this program. And by doing that, some people, the minority, felt we were being too harsh because we're expecting people to adhere to order. But in the end, vast majority of the people that came into our programs left having no addiction. So to me, the question here is, what has BC Housing and other provincial agencies demonstrated in terms of what they can do? First of all, let's think back to last summer when they knew that the temporary shelter was going to have to close because the lease was coming up for renewal and it was not going to be renewed. So we're sitting here more than a year later without temporary shelter. So that means to me that whoever is on the other side organizing this has not made Powell River a priority. And what I'm saying is we should make Powell River a priority. And if we make Powell River a priority, then we will get facilities that are standalone for people that are not addicted but are homeless and need a place. And we will have a facility for those that are addicted and are willing to understand that there are rights and responsibilities when they come into this program. And the net result will be what I've seen in 3 other cities, very positive outcome for those that were addicted and for those that just need shelter. Now, the other thing to put into perspective, I've had calls from father in Calgary, very upset at Powell River because we have a building bylaw which was making it difficult for him to build a shelter in the valley for his son. But another call from a mother living outside of Powell River who wanted to know why we were not taking a more active role in ensuring shelter for her daughter. So these are things that we have to make the province aware of. And we have to say that you have to have a program that is respectful of the residents, of the taxpayers, and will deal with small majority of people that are facing various challenges. Either, as Councillor Isaacs pointed out, they can't afford to have a place to live, or for whatever reason, they're addicted. So in terms of this motion, I think that items 3 and 4 make a lot of sense. And I've already talked exhaustively about security. And so some of you may recall that the question came up about lift security. And I made the point that they had $800,000 in sitting in their account, which was not designated for any purpose. They could have easily met a simple request to provide 24-hour professional security. Okay? So again, the question of security to me is a no-brainer. Why would you not want to have the security so that the majority of Powell River residents would feel safe? Okay, and with regard to the lease, that's something that's going on between staff and BC Housing. So that's, anyways. We now have Councilor Palm.
Sorry, Your Worship, just wanted to follow up. Excellent comments all around. I'm not going to get into any individual comments were made from individual councillors. That's not my point here. The whole point of this motion is simply to send a message that whatever is presently happening is really not working for the vast majority. And I have to say, in terms of the new facility and the engagement from BC Housing and LIFT to meet with the public, I was fortunate to have a citizen send me their invitation to attend. And so I went online and I got in the door to the first session. And we heard from the citizens, we heard from managers of Save On Foods that said they're going to have to close their facility in Victoria because things are, they're on Pandora Street. It's so bad that their staff will not work in the store. And, you know, we don't want the same thing happening here. That's plain and simple. I advocated, and I will say, I advocated that day during the meeting that there has to be greater consultation with the public, not just an invitation to a small fraction. They need to meet with the public and face the public and hear from the public. And we've asked them to do that, but I don't see it happening. I certainly wish it would. Thank you, Worship.
Okay, any further before we vote? Oh, I'm calling the motion. All in favor? Opposed? The motion is defeated. Okay,
You call.
yeah. Could we have order, please? I'm going to call a 3-minute recess.